Yes.
Yeah.
Yay. Good. Awesome. Okay, so thank you, sister, for the prayer. Thank you for setting the stage for all of us. I just want to give some announcements because we do have good news. We are always having opportunities for us to stay together. And at BSH, we also have even more opportunities during the week. So this is our agenda. Everybody can see our agenda at bshcenter.org. For those who have been asking, and I've been receiving those questions more often, we still are not physical. We still didn't return physically to a center, but we are having a lot of meetings online. Also, all the passes and all the healing services, they are still going on. We never stopped, and they are very efficient. So even though I know that we all miss being with each other physically, all the services, they keep going on, they keep happening. So feel free to send us your name or the name of someone you love that you know that is in need. We will be happy to be praying for the person and work with the healing doctors for the person to receive all the positive vibrations. And we do have the daily prayers. So from Monday to Saturday, we all get together at 6 p.m. Pacific time. It's only 15-20 minutes for us to really join our hearts and join our forces for us to vibrate, not only for ourselves, but also for the world. I will try to read a message that yesterday a medium received in Brazil from Dr. Becerra de Menezes that was giving a message from Mother Mary, just reinforcing to us the importance of us really keeping a good and a high vibration. So if everything goes right, at the end, I will read that small, very small message to all of us. So if you can, please join us on our daily prayer. On Sunday, we are all here together, so that's the only reason why we do not do a very specific time for it. As I mentioned, on Monday, we have the internal group doing the healing services. So again, feel free to send us any names that you are willing to bring for vibration. And then from Tuesday to Sunday, we have opportunities for us to study together, to discuss. And the only one that is new, just started 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago, was the book Workers of the Life Eternal, which is a book study with Divine Light, hosted also by Sunshine. And all of us get together for us to study this amazing book that was written by André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. So everybody's welcome to join us. It just started, so it's not that you missed a lot. And as I mentioned, all this is on our website. So if you have any question, you can just jump in there and take a look on what we are doing. And today I will be introducing our beloved brother, Luiz Lima. And again, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, this service is split into 2 parts. The first one, we will have Luiz talking to us, and I will introduce him and his speech in just 1 minute. And the second one will be a hands-on healing. But your mentors are already working with you. So please make sure that you are practicing an attentive listening, so that active listening, you're practicing an active listening, so then your mentor can help you to download the messages that are important for you to work and reflect upon your week. And Luiz, welcome, my dear brother. So for those who are meeting Luiz for the very first time, he was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Mr. Lima holds a degree in electronic engineering, and in 1990, Luiz Lima moved to United States, where he began his journey in Spiritism. Due to his vast knowledge in science, he became one of the most requested facilitators of Spiritism in both languages, Portuguese and English. Mr. Lima is a renowned lecturer in Spiritist movement and participates in local and national seminars and events all year round. It's really an amazing opportunity to have you here. And today he will take us through Immortal Spirit. So please help me to welcome our brother, Luiz Lima. The stage is yours, brother.
So thanks for the invitation, first of all. So thank you very much. Thanks for all of you for participating with us. And the topic that we chose to speak tonight, or this morning actually, is called Immortal Spirits. The reason why we picked this topic is it has to do with the history that we go through all centers. We used to, before the pandemic, physically on site, and a lot of lectures online. And there are certain things in Spiritism that we feel a tremendous difficulty from, the audience in understanding. One of them is this: the immortal spirit, the evolution of spirits, and all that comes with it. So that's why I took this topic to speak, and I think it makes it a little easier if we go with a visual, because it's going to be just personally, I think it's easier for the audience to capture the information that we want to display today. Immortal spirits. So, interesting phrase that we see in the Spirits book is, Allan Kardec is going to tell us, the universe is composed or comprised of worlds we can see. That's written right there in the chapter 4, creation. Worlds that we can see, worlds that we cannot see, inanimated beings, animated beings, heavenly bodies, and all of this is within a fluid that fills out the entire space called universal cosmic fluid. That's the phrase. So we look at this and we say, wow, that's a lot. And the question is, where is the spirit here? Spirit is part of the universe. So I think that's where the difficulty, the trouble understanding spirits starts. So I believe that what we want to do today is put things into context, bring things and make it clear what is spirit, what's not. Spirit and matter, all these things are a little cloudy for most of the audiences. We want to bring them, black and white answers if we can. Hopefully, we're going to be able to accomplish that. So Allan Kardec puts that phrase, and right on the first question after that, question 37, the spirits will respond to him and add this. Obviously, the universe did not create itself. Obviously. So if the universe did not create itself, there's something above all. And then to place things, to put things in context, and where is the spirit in this picture, we need to start from the level above. So we need to start from the creator. And then if we go through the first part of the Spirits book, there's a lot of questions that will bring us all the information that we're going to display here. We're not going to do question by question. This is a visual, more interpretation of the book. So from God, we know that definition of God, question number 1 in the Spirits book, it is defined as the supreme intelligence and first cause of all things. We're going to explain this in details, but it's there. Question number 1. So for most of us, for most of the audiences, we know this by heart. We can recite and replay this a million times, but the meaning becomes a little lost. So we need to go deep into the meaning of these two things. Hopefully we're going to be able to do it today. But from God, two things emanate. Okay? One thing is what we call the spiritual principle. That's how the spirits brought to us through the Spirits book. It's called the spiritual principle. The other thing that emanates from God is the universal cosmic fluid. The entire creation, absolutely everything in creation, comes from the interaction between the spiritual principle and the universal cosmic fluid. There is no common point to both. Spiritual principle is one thing, universal cosmic fluid is another thing, 100% apart. There is no common point between them. The creation takes place because they interact. So the spiritual principle is going to interact with the basics of the universal cosmic fluid, which the spirits call the material principle. So this universal cosmic fluid contains the very basic elements of what one day is going to be matter, as we know. Those elements, those basic elements, this is called material principle. So the spiritual principle is going to have to learn. Spiritual principle is simply ignorant. There's no knowledge at all. It has just been created. So it has to interact and learn how to interact with the universal cosmic fluid to start building things. Very much, for example, if you give a young kid, let's say a 2-year-old boy or a girl, if you give him a Lego, a set of Lego toys, on the first days, they won't be able to do anything. They will pick up one of those little blocks. They're going to throw on the wall, throw on the floor. They don't know what to do. But there's going to be a certain point where they pick with their one block with one hand, another block with another hand, and they go, oh, these things, they fit together. It's trial and error, just like here. So the baby will learn how to deal with the blocks, and he's going to be an expert one day that he can build beautiful things, a house, whatever. The very same thing happens here. The spiritual principle has to start from nothing, from trial and error, go into this material principle and start digging with that. So he has to learn how to deal with the very basic elements of matter. For a long time, we thought the basic element of matter was the atom. Then we found out the atom is a gigantic thing because it has at least 3 other sub-elements, protons, electrons, and neutrons, and those are formed by even smaller things, which you see the names here. The names are not important, but you see the names here, quarks, leptons, bosons, and it goes. Okay, hadrons, there's more. So the spiritual principle has to learn how to use these very basic elements of matter to form things that are more complex. So by dealing with quarks, leptons, and bosons, they will be able to form one day electrons and protons and neutrons. And by dealing with those, they will learn how to form an atom. By interacting or binding several atoms together, they will form molecules, and binding several of those together, it will form the minerals. And that's how the mineral kingdom is born. But you see, the spiritual principle does not stop. Its evolution is never ending. It never stops. So the next step for the spiritual principle, now it knows how to produce minerals, rocks, and everything else, diamonds, okay? You will have to learn how to infuse life into these elements. Because we are these. We are atoms and molecules, and the same elements that form my body, they form, the table, the computer, everything that we know. The chemical elements are the same. There's going to be a point where the spiritual principle learn how. We're not going to get into much details here because this is about evolution. We just want to give you an overview to fit, to show where the spirit fits. So when the spiritual principle learns how to infuse life into matter, and that's called vital principle, it kind of graduates. It receives a diploma, and it graduates and it gets a new name, like a person. They go to medical school. When they graduate, they take a title, doctor. Okay, so it's the same idea here. So they become what we call then intelligent principle. Okay, this intelligent principle never stops. Again, it continues, never stops interacting with the material principle to form other types of material things. But these material things now are much more complex than the spiritual principle could do, because now they are creating life or living elements, living beings. So this intelligent principle goes through the entire plants kingdom, then jumps over to the entire animal kingdom. We're just overviewing. We're not explaining details. This is not the topic is not evolution, okay? And it goes through the entire animal kingdom to a point where it learns how to produce individuals. This individualization is another point of advancement for the intelligent principle. It's a second graduation. And then we call the intelligent principle spirit. So the spirit is the individualization of the intelligent principle. And the spirit never stops again. The thing continues. It never stops interacting with the material principle to form other things like physical bodies, livers, hearts, brains, all of it, all of it. So spirits are evolution of the intelligent principle. That's the first, we're trying to get to the point where the spirit fits exactly. So this is the number one thing that we need to understand. We're going to use this picture a lot throughout the presentation here because everything is based on the understanding of spirit being an evolution of the intelligent principle, which in turn is an evolution of the spiritual principle. Okay, everything that you see here in the yellow square is object of study by science, not us. We do not study any of that. We don't go to the labs to see if the atoms are doing this or that. We don't have any labs, we spiritists. We do not study life from the material point of view. That's biology. Biology does that. We do not study the animals. Zoology does that. So the science throughout its various, these are just some of them, 5 or 6 here, but through its innumerous I would say, academic studies, they will study that. We do not. We spiritists study the rest of it. So we study God, supreme intelligence, first cause of all things, and the evolution of the intelligent principle. They do not study this. We do. So we study things like the creation, existence of God, spirits, morality, all of those things that we know of. They do not study any of that. And we do not study quantum physics. We do not study chemistry. We use their findings and studies to understand the intelligent principle. Well, we are not the ones going to the lab. Quantum physicists will say, we just found this. Nice. I, as a spiritist, need that information to understand the evolution of the intelligent principle. Okay, so that's why Allan Kardec says that science and spiritism go hand in hand. Okay, I don't know if you can hear that, but that's why science and spiritism, they need each other, because one without the other, we wouldn't have a broken understanding of things. Okay, I don't know if you got clear on this thing, but that's why he says if you abandon one side and just look at the other, you have some explanation, but it's going to be a broken explanation. So Allan Kardec and the spirits, Allan Kardec and the spirits, they put it very clearly to us. Coming back to this here, so now we have 2 parts: the part that we study, evolution of the intelligent principle, and the part that science studies. Looking at the left side, because of evolution that we just briefly touched on, there will be different levels of intelligent principle. So some spirits are more advanced than others, more intelligent, morality and intellectually speaking. So there are different levels of intelligence. If there are different levels of intelligence, there is one intelligence that is supreme, above all. No other gets there. That's why, on the definition of God, the spirits start by saying God is the supreme intelligence, above everything that you see on the left side. Now jump over to the right side, which is object study of science. Science looks for the truth on facts. For example, if you hold, just like Newton, right? The apple comes down from the tree, or if you hold something with your hand and you let go, it's going to go to the floor. Science looks for answers. Well, gravity. But why is there gravity? Because of this. Why is this? And it's an infinite sequence of questions and answers, one after the other, because they are actually looking. Science looks for causes of things, but they are actually looking for the first cause of all things. That's what science is looking for, the first cause of all things. So the Spirit's book, definition of God, supreme intelligence and first cause of all things, is global. It applies to everybody, to us and to them, and everybody in between. Because it is a complete definition. So concentrating on the spirit, here on the left side, spirit is not part of the material plan, is not part of the universal cosmic fluid. You will use that for its own development. Let's go to the next thing. In here, in the universal cosmic fluid, we saw that there is something that we call the material principle. So there's a triangle up there, triad, which is God, spiritual principle, and material principle. Those are the very basic elements of the universe. If you want to go to the next level, in which the material principle is going to be used by the spirits to form matter as we know it, then we can see from one level above, where we have God, spirit, and matter. And that's considered in Spiritism, that's what we call the universal trinity. And it's on the Spirit's book, question 27. This is why they say there's a universal trinity, because of this. Now, to get to this explanation, we have to go through all that we did now. So they just give us that answer shortly, but that's what it means. So God, spirit, and matter. And we're going to come back here again. All right. So a lot of us, if not most of us, we like to call ourselves immortal spirits. And you see here on the left side on the green, I changed from spirit to immortal spirit. Two things to be discussed here. First, there's some confusion between immortal spirit and eternal spirit. Eternal is anything that doesn't have an end, but also doesn't have a beginning, and that's God. Spirits have a beginning. They are created as a spiritual principle of some form in the past. So there was a beginning. That's why we should not call them eternal, but immortal. Now, next thing to think about, immortal spirits. We spiritists, we are very proud to call ourselves immortal spirits. It gives us a feeling, oh, I'm immortal spirit. That's not wrong. But if you come to think of it, something to be mortal, meaning the contrary of immortal, something to be mortal have to be something physical that has atoms and molecules aggregated and they dissolve. They transform themselves, and that thing kind of dies, meaning it gets transformed. So the word mortal can never refer to anything on the left side. It can only refer to something on the right side. So when we say immortal spirit, it's not wrong, but it's just redundant. Spirits are immortal by definition. There is no matter of any, there is no material principle on the spirit. Material principle is not part of it. And the next thing that we need to understand is about, are spirits divisible or not? Look at this from, it's a comment that Allan Kardec puts on the answer of question 92A. Each spirit is an indivisible unit, but each one can extend its thought in different directions without dividing itself up. That means the spirit is not divisible, because to be that, it has to be something matter. It depends on having material principle. So molecules, a certain number of molecules, you have a body formed of molecules, any body, it could be a heavenly body, whatever it is, a mass of molecules that you can divide into. So part of the molecules come to one side, part of the molecules come to the other side, then you divide it. A spirit doesn't have molecules. It cannot be divided in that sense. So these words, mortal and divisible, or immortal and indivisible, have to be well understood. We just don't say because everybody does, okay? Because there is no material principle in the spirit. And then the next thing that we need to explain is the difference between soul and spirit, which also gets a little bit confusing at times. So going back to our initial picture, intelligent principle and material principle, they are independent from each other. And we saw that the intelligent principle will evolve into what we call spirit. Now that's the interesting part. You see, because we live in a physical world, material world, it is very difficult for us to understand the intelligent principle, without any form of material parts attached to it, because we can only think materially speaking as incarnated spirits. So most of the times when we say the intelligent principle or spirit, rather, we understand that this is already connected somehow to the material principle. And that connection comes through the existence of something that Allan Kardec and the spirits explain to us, perispirit. So the perispirit it comes from the material principle, and the spirit learns how to attach that, and that becomes its perispirit. Now, these two things that you see on the left side, the yellow in the intelligent principle spirit and the perispirit together, that's what we call spirit with a capital S. In a lot of translations, including translations into English, this is not respected. Sometimes Allan Kardec refers to spirit with a lowercase s. Sometimes it refers to spirit with an uppercase s, and they are different, as you can see here. As of question 76 on the Spirits book, Allan Kardec introduces spirit with a capital S, and it explains what I'm showing here. Okay, so that's different. Spirit with a lowercase is just the intelligent principle. Spirit with an uppercase, it's what we usually call spirit, which includes its spirit. It has 1 foot per se, quotes there, right? 1 foot into the material principle. And then when this capital S spirit incarnates, it receives physical body, produces its own physical body. When that takes place, then this capital S spirit takes another name, soul. You see, soul still does not include the physical body, but it's the name that we give to the intelligent principle and its perispirit when there is a physical body, when it is incarnated. So that's the main difference between spirit and soul, which is sometimes also confusing because on the Spirits book, there's a question, what is soul? So it refers to the spirit, but depending on the translation, it's not clear where you are. Which spirit are you talking about? Capital S or lowercase s? All right, so that goes for spirit and soul. Now we're going to jump over to the right side of the screen, the material part. That's where the universal cosmic fluid is. And that's where the entire creation is in. Anything that is created becomes part of this universal cosmic fluid because it's modified from it. It's like the water in a fish tank. Okay, so this universal cosmic fluid, which is the most pure form, gets transformed successively. In a first batch of transformation, it will allow the transforming spirits, those who are able to transform the universal cosmic fluid. By the way, you and I are not. None of you and me, we are not able to transform, to put our hands, quotes there, in the universal cosmic fluid. We are not. But certain spirits, the highest level of evolved spirits are able to. They will make a first transformation of the universal cosmic fluid creating what is called cosmic dwellings. Once these cosmic dwellings are in place, another group of spirits can modify this again. So you see, it's going to be a second layer of modifications, transformation. And we'll create what we call starry empires. Once these starry empires are in place, another group of spirits will customize, let's just use the word customize, and form galaxies and constellations. Once they're in place, the next group of spirits are going to customize again and create planets. Earth is one of them. Once the planets are in place, they are going to be customized with what we call imponderable matter, which is the matter that any of our five senses cannot capture. Okay, that's quintessential, that's imponderable matter. And within that, ponderable matter. So you see, when you look at a chair, for example, which is ponderable matter, it came from the imponderable matter in the planet, which came from, a transformation of galaxies and so on and so on and so. So who is able to do what here? God does the first thing, creates the universal cosmic fluid, and nobody else. Nobody creates that. Groups of very high advanced spirits, which have four different names to mean the same thing. It's not four groups, it's four names for the same thing. Divine intelligences, great devas, archangels, and glorious intelligences. These spirits, very advanced, are able to modify the original universal cosmic fluids to create these things that we see. Planets is one of them. So Jesus created the planet Earth. So he is one of these spirits that were granted with a mission to create a planet. And who touches the imponderable and ponderable matter of each planet? In our case, spirits and human intelligences. You see, the fluid that we are able to touch and modify is not really the universal cosmic fluid, is what I personally call the planetary fluid. I can modify the planetary fluid. I cannot modify the planetary fluid of Jupiter or Saturn or Capella or anything like this. I cannot. I cannot even create a planet, neither can you. But we are able to modify the planetary fluid to create imponderable matter, for example, very spirit, thought, and ponderable matter, for example, chair, physical body, heart, brain. Okay, so you see, we as incarnated spirits, we are extremely limited in what we can do because of our level of advancement. We cannot create planets. So we're going to have to learn and get there. One day we're going to be able to create planets, then create galaxies, then starry empires, then cosmic planets. And that's what we call the perfection. So it's not going to happen tomorrow morning. Praying tonight to wake up as one of them is not going to do it. There's a lot of work to be done. Okay, but that's the general idea. And then with this, Allan Kardec creates what is called or known as spiritist hierarchy, in which actually that's what happens. In a conversation with the spirits, he says, for me to explain what I need to explain to my audience, I'd rather classify the spirits according to their level of evolution. What do you think? And the spirits will say, listen, you can classify, you can put 3 categories, 10 categories, 25, you can give the names that you want, as long as the teachings are preserved. So Allan Kardec creates 10 categories to classify the spirits according to their level of advancement. And you see here on the very far left, the impure are the less evolved ones, all the way across to the right side, the pure spirits are the most advanced ones. And he groups them. He creates, out of these 10 categories, he creates 3 groups. Imperfect or third order spirit, the ones in red or reddish. Then the good ones in green and the pure ones in blue. Okay, so what's the difference? Why did he create this? Here's the difference. Red spirits, for them, material life is more important, a lot more important than spiritual life. There's a tremendous propensity to do bad things, evil things. A lot of selfishness, ignorance, pride, and all the vices that we know of. And very little understanding of spiritual matters. Very little understanding. Those are the red spirits. We are here. These spirits, they live in planets such as Earth. Earth is one of them. It's not the only one, it's one of them. So for the most part, we are red spirits. Occasionally, it pops up here and there, a green spirit, like Evaldo, Chico Xavier, Mother Teresa, Gandhi. No, occasionally we have some of those. And those are on a different tone. Those are much more concerned with the spiritual life over material life. They have no propensity whatsoever, zero, to do evil things. There's a tremendous and only desire to do good things. And that's what they do all the time. They have a much better understanding of what God and infinity is compared to us, the red spirits. And they don't have these bad passions, these crazy emotions that we have or we carry with us, because they were red one day. But, they are good spirits. They are on a different level, completely different than we are. And the pure spirits are those who no longer need to incarnate. Jesus is one of them. They incarnate as a mission only for benefit of those who need guidance. That's exactly what he did. You see, Jesus incarnated, not even for the good spirits. He incarnated for the imperfect, third order, us. But it only happens as a mission. That's not something that we see all the time. Okay, so far we've tried to, contextualize a little bit, put things into context. What is a spirit? How things are, the difference between spirit and matter, difference between intelligent principle and material principle. We spoke a little bit about fluids, the ability that each spirit has depending on its level of evolution. Now we're going to be analyzing the spirit here on planet Earth. So far, we spoke very generically. Now we're going to bring the spirits to our planet. So they will be incarnated or not, they will be living under the planetary fluid. So you see, the spirits that live here, incarnated or not, they are limited by what the planetary fluid lets them do it. And that's limited by who and why? By the governor of the planet. And why? Because if we try to give them a more subtle, a more refined planetary fluid, all the discarnates and incarnates will no longer be able to be on the planet. We would all die, disappear. We wouldn't have to be transmigrated to another planet where the planetary fluid is similar to ours. This image that you have here is from a book. There was, this is a picture that it was channeled by Igorina Cunha. She's one of the Brazilian mediums. And the story on the book is very interesting. The book is like 35, maybe 40 pages. It's very thin. And it has 12 sketches, 12 drawings. This is one of them. And she, at a certain point in her youth, she was having dreams every day. And these dreams were, from her perspective, very intense. Not bad, but just very intense, very real in what she could tell. And they started to be recurring. So they were coming in all the time, every night for her. So she said, maybe if I draw these things that I see, these dreams will go away because it's getting on my nerves. That's exactly what she thought at the time. So she couldn't draw. I mean, just like a lot of people, they can't draw. So she did some drawing the way she could to the best of her ability. This is one of them. But the dreams did not go away. They continued. So she drew 12 things. And she said, I can't take this anymore. It's really, I got to do something. So she takes the 12 drawings and takes to Chico Xavier, Brazilian medium Chico Xavier, and she presents to him and tells the story. I've been dreaming with this. So she opens up the 12 drawings, and Chico Xavier, he puts his two hands on his head and says, oh my God, this is Nosso Lar. This is Nosso Lar, the colony. And the images that are used in the book, on the cover of the book, in the movie, Nosso Lar, they come from these drawings. They are based on this. This drawing here, which is very specific, we want to study now, represents the 12 spiritual layers of the planet Earth. Spiritual layers. I don't know if you can see in the middle, you have a ball. You can see the United States and South America there, right in the middle in yellow, okay, around the red circle here. So if we look inside the planet, science tells us inside the planet, we have 4 layers. That comes from science, okay? They are from inner to outer, inner core, outer core, mental, and upper mental. No incarnates live there. All incarnates, regardless of their level of development and morality, all of them 100% live on the crust. But when these these impure or non-advanced spirits, when they discarnate, they come here. That's what we call in spiritism the lower zones or the dark zones. That's where they're going to live. So people like, Hitlers and Bin Ladens and others presently out there, that's where they're going to go. And we're going to explain why in a little bit. Upper from that, we have the crust. The crust is where the incarnates are. All incarnates, regardless of who they are on the crust. There are no discarnates living on the crust. Upper from the crust, we have what we call umbral. Up from that, we have 3 more layers: arts, cultures, and science, universal fraternal law, directives of the planet. And up from there, it's outside the planetary fluid, what we would call stereodome. It's outside the planetary fluid. This umbral is actually divided for academic reasons for us to understand better in 3 layers: lower umbral, medium, and umbral. Spiritual colony Nosso Lar is on the umbral, the green that you see, umbral. That's where they are. Now think about a building, okay, a building with 12 floors. And then somebody or the association says every owner is required to be in a meeting on the 5th floor. During that meeting, everybody, no exception, is on the 5th floor. You might live on the 3rd or on the 12th because whatever condition. But during that meeting, you are on the 5th floor. It's the same thing here. When we are called into a lifetime that we program ourselves, we will go to the crust, no matter where we come from. So on the crust, we are going to see people that come from arts and culture. We are going to see people that come from the inner core. So what's going to happen on the crust? There's a tremendous shock of energies and ideas, because you have people with completely different degrees of moral and intellectual advancement living on the same spot, sharing the same space. That's why it's so confusing or so complicated for some of us to see some other brothers and sisters and complain, oh, these guys are this, those people are that. We are all incarnated. When we discarnate, that's a whole different story. What happens when we discarnate? Let's go by analogy. Think of a recipient with water, like you see here, okay? Put a lot of water in there. If we take a small ball, styrofoam ball, and let go from the top, it will be at the surface. I don't think anybody doubts on that. That's pure science. And why will that stay afloat or on the surface? Because it's very light. Now, if I let go an iron ball, what happens? It's gonna go to the bottom. You can pray as much as you want. We can do collective prayer to have this iron ball in the middle or to have this styrofoam ball in the middle. It's not gonna happen. It does not depend on our wishes. Now, the next thing is, if I put my hands inside the recipient, and if I take the iron ball and I physically hold the iron ball halfway, like you see in the picture here, just halfway, the iron ball is gonna stay halfway for as long as I hold it. If I never let it go, it will be forever in the middle, and halfway down. What happens when the second that I let it go? It's gonna go to the bottom. My wishes that it would be to going to the top will not make it happen. Same for a styrofoam ball. I can hold this halfway down for as long as I can. And for as long as I hold it halfway down, it will stay in there. The minute I let it go, it's gonna go up to the surface. And I can't control that. I cannot control that. And why is that? Because there is something here that physics called specific weight. Specific weight on the iron is very heavy, so it's more than the specific weight of the water, so it comes down all the way down. Specific weight on a styrofoam ball is less than the specific weight of water, so it stays up. This is exactly what happens to us when we discarnate. We are being held by a physical body in the middle of the water called crust. They're being held at a layer called crust. The minute this physical body is let go, what happens to me? My perispirit is gonna go to the layer that is compatible with its specific weight. So if I'm a very bad person, very, very, very bad person, the minute I die or I'm let go, I'm gonna go down to outer core, inner core, maybe mantle. I'm gonna be in the dark zone. If I'm, this wonderful person, wonderful charitable spirit, and so full of love, when I'm let go, I'm gonna go up. I can't decide, bargain, negotiate, or buy my residence when I'm dying at the time of death. It's already decided when I'm gonna go based on my perispirit. So think about this. When you look at the picture, to go, if a person belongs to, let's just say, arts and culture, spiritually speaking, when they die, they have to go from the crust, they have to go up to arts and culture. They will go through the umbral. They are not going to stay there, but they have to go through it. Same for Jesus. He's all the way up there. He's on the crust as incarnated 2,000 years ago. He gets discarnated. He has to go through all the layers to get all the way up to the layer his perispirit is compatible with, which is the highest possible layer. but he has to go through umbral. He has to go through arts and culture, through universal love and directive of the planet. So we are scared of the idea that we're going to go to the umbral. Not necessarily. We could be very optimistic because we're going to come down, or we could be very pessimistic because we're going to go to arts and culture. But still, we have to cross the umbral. We're not staying in there. It's just, the road crosses it, that's all. So that's what I wanted to bring to you about spirits today, immortal spirits. When you look at these 12 layers, the spirit never dies. Spirit is not mortal. It's going to live somewhere else. There's a very interesting passage that Jesus tells us. There are several dwellings in my Father's house. In this one house, planet Earth, there are 12 dwellings. There are several. We're going to leave the crust and we are going to go to the one that is compatible with the specific weight of our perispirit. So that's the idea I wanted to present to you today. So we'll be here for any questions, any comments, anything is welcome.
Wow, Luis, that was so interesting. so interesting. A lot to digest. And Luis, one thing that it was interesting because I think that I might have understood wrong because I thought that the spiritual principle was an effect from the universal cosmic fluid. And it's not. So those are two different things. That's interesting.
They have 0% in common. Universal cosmic fluid and spiritual principle. 0% in common. The same way I was explaining like the baby and the Lego, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There are no common parts, physical parts. If you think about physical, the baby has its own physical body and cells. None of those belong to the block when he picks the block. Mm-hmm. And none of the molecules in the block belong to him.
Very interesting.
Independent.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions to Luis? Any comments?
I loved it. I really learned a lot from it, and especially the graphics. That was major important for me to see, and it kind of really landed. I mean, a lot of it was like, what? Oh, that I get it. Yeah. Who was that lady you mentioned with that book? Is it in English? That's the other thing.
I don't think this in English. In Portuguese, the name of the book is Cidade do Além.
Oh, well, okay.
If the Portuguese speakers want to take it down. And the author, the medium is Egorina Cunha.
Yeah, I do have it.
Yeah, it's a small, tiny 35, 40 page book. Very interesting.
So maybe Charles will translate it for us.
And it's a small thing. It's not too bad to translate. It's not like 500 pages or something. It's relatively easy.
That's right. A lot of graphics, really interesting. I need to dig it out, Regina. But talking about the spiritism and science, I appreciate the presentation, Luis. That's a really good and interesting explanation. I remember seeing some of these graphics in another video that is published on YouTube. I believe that Teresa and I, we went through that and translated from Portuguese to English. That was interesting, but exactly what you were introducing. To me, I just want to have a clarification question about, is it still kind of difficult for a lot of people to understand the difference between immortal and eternal? Can you give us a little bit of that, Luis?
Yeah, like we mentioned in the beginning, immortal is something that had a beginning but never has an end. That's what the spiritual principle is. It was created at a certain point. Eternal is something that does not have an end, but also it doesn't have a beginning. Us, as material related people, because we are incarnated, we cannot grasp that concept. It's very, it would be very difficult for us. But eternal means there's no creation. It's been there forever and ever, and it will never disappear, never die. We have a beginning. We as immortal spirits have a beginning, but not an end. And we explain the difference of why calling us immortal spirits is redundant. We also explain that.
That's why God is still continues to create and continues to create new spirits.
Correct. Never stops.
Never stop.
Luis, thank you so much. I've listened to some of your other lectures, on the introduction to Spiritism, and I know you've been on Kardec Radio, and excellent. I was excited to hear you this morning because you explain things very well, very detailed, but yet you can follow. Because I can't tell you how many other times other spiritists have tried to explain to me the evolution, the cosmic fluid, the spirit, and it's like it gets so lost and overwhelmed. But what did I want to ask you? I know I have like a million questions, but I need to process this. It's a lot. And in some ways it's very humbling because, and I include myself, I think many of us can sometimes fall into the illusion like, oh, we've done so much studying, we're going to go right, and be in, up with these pure spirits maybe. But so it was very humbling and also eye-opening, to the reality of, what this looks like in these different divisions. I wanted to ask you though, so this information, is it like even when you, these different, well, I guess, so it all comes from that woman's book, these different.
No, not all, just the drawing. Nothing else comes from the book. It comes from a combination of a million things. It comes, first of all, codification, spirits book, and Genesis. There's a lot of information there.
Okay.
But mostly a lot of André Luiz later on in the 1940s and later.
Okay.
And a lot of it comes from science, on points that science hits the wall and they place these question marks.
Right. So even like this idea of starry empires, this is like a new term for me. So
that's in the book by Emmanuel, On the Way to the Light.
On the Way to the Light. Okay. Yeah. Some of those
all those cosmic dwellings, starry domes, and so that's in that book.
I see.
On the Way to the Light.
Thank you very much. It was illuminating.
Yeah.
Hi, Luis. This is Sunshine. Thank you so much for your incredibly clear and wonderful lecture. I have a question for you. So the way I understood it, and I'm fuzzy in actually even how saying it, there is God and there's the universal cosmic fluid.
And the spiritual principle.
And the spiritual principle. So when I go to Genesis chapter 2, and that's entitled, it's under the main chapter, God, but then it's the further subject chapter is providence. And there, Allan Kardec tells us that we are in God just as God is in us. So the way he describes it, I thought, was basically that God is the universal cosmic fluid. It is the intelligence that, because he says, let us imagine a fluid subtle enough to penetrate everything. But then it also says that divine providence is this fluid endowed with intelligence, perception, sensitivity. It no longer acts blindly, but with discernment, will, and freedom. It sees, understands, and feels. What am I missing? It seems jumbled, right?
Yes, the universal cosmic fluid, it was created. It had a creator.
Okay? By God.
By God. So if it was created by God, it cannot be God. It has to be at least one layer above.
Obviously, yeah.
At least one layer above.
So how come Allan Kardec then draws a line between or connects the universal cosmic fluid with divine providence?
Well, divine providence, you can understand as something that God did or produced or created as a tool. It's a tool. And that's exactly what the universal cosmic fluid is a tool for the intelligent principle to learn and develop and go into a progressive line of incarnations until it gets to be what we call the pure spirits.
Yeah, so the supreme intelligence, which is God, lives through the universal cosmic fluid. And that's why it is the fluid that sees, understands, and feels. And that's why God lives in us and we live in God.
If I may, Luis.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sunshine, I think we need to consider that that full comprehension of what God is and all its creation is actually still beyond our level of understanding. I think that's where we find the limit of our comprehension of what that is, and we cannot find that in books or in the literature. That is something that is beyond our, at least our level of evolution yet. One day.
And it's beyond, because God is one layer above us, which are
Exactly.
I understand.
We
But
are
my question wasn't to understand God at all. It was to understand how the divine principle, how the divine providence works. But I think I did understand, and that's why I was feeding it back to you, Luis, by basically saying, since God created the universal cosmic fluid, God's intelligence, so that's why we can say this fluid sees, understands, and feels everything, because divine providence is really the expression of God through the universal cosmic fluid, which
Right.
then leads us to understand that God lives in us and we live in God, because we are made out of the universal cosmic fluid as well, right?
We are made, we incarnate, not we the intelligent principle.
Yeah, no, of course not.
Right?
That's
We
our
the
body.
intelligent principle, we spirits
Mhm,
are not made of the universal cosmic fluid.
that's right. Yeah, it's just our bodies.
Okay. Yeah, you see these little things. I'm picky because that's what, throughout the years, 20 years doing the same thing, that's where people get lost, because the vocabulary
Yeah.
gets like adapted to each one. I like to say that way, I like to say that way, and she or he likes to say that way. Okay, certain things we can do that, but for concepts and words and vocabulary, especially on a new science and philosophy, you can't do that. You have to go by the book. That's why a lot of the explanations about spirits get confused, because sometimes it's spirit with a lowercase s, sometimes it's uppercase s, and they are different.
Yes.
Unfortunately, in the English translations that I have, it's all lowercase, regardless. If you go to the French, and it's very clear in French, on question 76, he uses the capital S and he stops and says, listen, people, more or less like this. Listen, people, I'm using capital S because it's not the same thing as before. And then he explains what the difference is. So obviously, it makes a difference when we look at the text, if it's capital S or not. When you say, you can't do that. That's why, but this is a personal thing that I do, okay, as a speaker. When I have to refer to the lowercase s, spirit, verbally, I say intelligent principle. This is me, okay? There's no obligation to do this, because I think that's going to be less confusing. Otherwise, I would have to say people, this spirit, but then I'm not saying about spirit with a capital S, or it gets very confused. So for me, when I say spirit, it's uppercase S. When I say intelligent principle, it would be the lowercase s.
Okay, great. It's clear. Thank you so much, Luis. Clarify.
Well, just to continue this interesting debate, is like understanding what is supreme intelligence or the spirit of truth. It's very important to have a clear understanding of what the superior spirit of truth is, the same way as important to understand what divine providence is. What is that? So are we clear on that? That's very interesting.
Well, yeah, the spirit of truth that Kardec mentions is obviously an intelligence that is above all, right? That it refers to the absolute truth. So that would be the highest level possible of intelligence, above all of us and everything else, right? And providence, to my understanding, is something that God creates or does that allows us to use as a tool.
That's my understanding as well.
And
That's
which is the universal cosmic fluid.
It's one of them, I would
right.
say.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah. The
Friends,
providence could be the fluid itself is one of them, but situations that are created for
Right.
us to live through or whatever, that's another one.
But there's a distinction between divine providence and cosmic fluid. They are not the same.
yeah.
They're not the same. Yeah. Cosmic fluid is something material. It requires, it's based on material principle. Providence is an action of God. Okay.
Yeah, and it's somehow linked to the universal cosmic fluid, according to Alan Kardec. That's the means then.
If it's something that needs to, the providence could be, for example, an accident, okay? For that to happen, there's gotta be some material, physical thing that happens to create an accident. And then yes, you depend on the universal cosmic fluid for that, because it's physical. It requires the material principle. But the providence is the idea of.
It's just Alan Kardec says, imagine a fluid that sees everything, that feels everything, that knows everything. And he equates that with divine providence in that chapter. That's why I'm trying to get clear on. And I thought I was. And now you said divine providence is separate from the universal cosmic fluid. It doesn't make sense to me if I look at the chapter in Genesis.
We have to see the whole context, but the providence is not the fluid. The fluid is one of them. It's a tool.
I think, Luis, that's what you were trying to explain, is that this is complicated. And my question is, do you have an email where questions can be sent to you?
Absolutely.
So
yeah, they have my email. They can always send to me.
I think it takes a little while. The other comment I want to make is that when we study, or even if you go to school and a teacher explains something, it's difficult. And we, as in our brains, I think, receive concepts in a different manner. At least I do.
That's true.
Yeah, that was the whole difficulty that Allan Kardec had to bring in Spiritism, because he could not refer to anything in the past.
Mm.
So he had to write an introduction to the Spirits book, which is another book by itself.
Yeah.
Because everything is new. Otherwise, he would say, as we know from quantum physics, and Can't do that. So
That's what,
there's no past reference to be used.
which makes sense. Yeah. That's why at least I get told to read the books again and again, because you get a little understanding. And when you read it again, you get another understanding, as in layers.
Yes.
So,
If I may,
friends, I'm sorry, Charles.
yeah.
We are super late. I'm sorry. As much as I'm loving this discussion, we can schedule another time for
Yeah.
Luis to come back and
Sure.
for us to resume. I'm also posting his email on our chat. So if anyone wants to follow up with him, I'm sure he will be happy to.
Yeah.
To keep
Absolutely.
discussing, if that's okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you guys. This has been
No.
amazing. It's just because we do have a time, and we all know that discipline is a huge part of Spiritism. So I appreciate everybody's participation. And Luis, once more, thank you so much for coming. This was really enlightening. It's amazing. We will take 1 minute break, just so you to stretch your legs, get your bottle of water. And then we will resume for the second part, which will have the healing passes and the hands-on, the meditation and the healing passes. Thank you. See you guys in a minute.
Okay.
Luis, I just sent everybody your email. I hope that that's fine.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And we can always have more time with you later. That was very interesting.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I also want to read the message that Dr. Bezerra de Menezes sent yesterday. It's really beautiful. Let me just grab my water. 1 second.
I believe it's safe to say you are definitely welcome back. Thank
Yeah,
you so
these
much for
subjects are a
coming.
little cloudy sometimes, especially because of all the definitions and so on. I try to, you know,
Luis, my teaser question was that what is after pure spirits?
well, if you go up in the scale, pure spirits go from planetary to all the way to the cosmic dwellings.
Right,
Within pure, there's also graduations.
that's right.